platform of community engagement and environmental sustainability. One of his first acts was to start a town garden where people could grow their own food and learn about nature. Dr. Park published a book about her experiences, which became a bestseller and inspired people around the world to rethink their relationship with sleep and stillness, and in the hills north of town, the stone continued to glow, a reminder of the power that lay sleeping within the earth and within every human. Spring and Autumn of Wu and Yu chronicles the legendary and historical traditions of the ancient Wu and Yu kingdoms during the later Spring and Autumn and early Warring States periods. This rich narrative tradition preserves tales of the remarkable Wu King Guian, whose legendary endurance and strategic patience became symbols of the unconquerable human spirit. The story of the beautiful Shi Shi, considered one of the four great beauties of Chinese history, and the political, them all a little uneasy. Chapter 2, The Second Night. By the second night, the town had developed a new routine. Since no one could sleep, people simply stayed awake. Businesses that normally closed at 6 or 7 in the evening stayed open later. Rose's coffee shop became the center of town activity, with people gathering there to talk, play cards, and share their theories about what was happening. Dr. Sarah Park was the town's only doctor. She had moved to Harmony Falls 8 years ago. Collection is particularly strong on encounters with non-human entities, fox spirits who take human form, ghosts who communicate with the living, and divine beings who intervene in mortal affairs. Liu Jingshu writes with precision and restraint, allowing the strangeness of events to speak for themselves without excessive moralizing. This approach gives the work a distinctive literary quality that influenced later strange tale collections. Shared their experiences. They talked about what they had seen and felt. They compared notes. They realized that together, they were seeing more than any of them could see alone. Dr. Park, who had spent her whole life believing in science and medicine, found herself believing in something else now. Not instead of science, but alongside it. There were things in the universe that science couldn't explain, and maybe that was okay. Maybe the unexplained was what made life interesting, the memory. They belonged, but in all those years, he had never taken a vacation. He had never spent more than a day away from the store. He had been so busy building his business that he had forgotten to build a life. On the 10th day, Jim closed the store for the first time ever. He put a sign on the door that read, "Gone fishing. Back when I'm back." His wife, Mary, couldn't believe it. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm going fishing," Jim said. "Like the sign says, for how long?" "I don't know. A week. Years I was too busy. For all the times I chose the store over you. For all the things I should have said and didn't." Mary pulled back to look at him. "What happened to you?" she asked. "I woke up," Jim said simply. "I woke up and I finally saw what was important." They went inside, and Jim told her about his fishing trip, about the deer, about the conversations he had had with himself. He told her things he had never told her before. And Mary listened, and when he was done, she told him her own. "Didn't change because you wanted to be famous," she said. "You changed because something inside you woke up. The fame is just an accident. The real change is what happened in here," she said, touching her heart. The hotel owner was quiet for a moment. "You're right," he said. "I don't care about the fame. What I care about is what I feel when I walk down Main Street now. I feel like I know my neighbors for the first time. I feel like I'm part of something. I feel like I'm home." Driving by, and someone playing music on a radio too loud. Jim was the owner of the Harmony Falls grocery store. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and a friendly face that everyone in town knew. He put on his slippers and walked to his window, which faced Main Street. What he saw surprised him. People were everywhere. Not crowds exactly, but more people than you would see on a busy afternoon. And it was 4 in the morning. People were walking their dogs, jogging, sitting on their By the evening of the second day, the exhaustion in town had become almost unbearable. People who had spent the day walking around, trying to stay busy, were now struggling to keep their eyes open. But every time they lay down to rest, even for a few minutes, they found themselves wide awake again, staring at the ceiling. Tom Reeves drove around town that night, checking on people. He found a woman crying on her porch because she hadn't slept in 40 hours and couldn't take it anymore. Of light on plant growth. She had set up an experiment in her garage, with bean plants growing under different colored lights. She had been too busy to pay much attention to the experiment lately, but now, with nothing else to do, she had started to observe her plants more carefully, What she noticed was extraordinary. The beans plants growing under the blue light had grown twice as fast as the plants under the white light. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was that from day to day. But what about the big dream? The one that's been waiting for us all along? Rosa nodded slowly. I've been running this coffee shop for 30 years, she said. 30 years of making coffee and listening to people's problems and watching their children grow up. And in all that time, I never once stopped to think about what it all means. I just kept moving, one day to the next, 1 year to the next. And now, 3 days without sleep, and suddenly I can see it all so clearly. Say anything. She didn't have to. The music had said everything. Chapter 10, The Doctor's Discovery. Dr. Sarah Park had been a doctor for 25 years. She had seen everything from common colds to rare cancers. She had saved lives and lost lives. She had done everything she could to help her patients, and she had done it within the strict framework of modern medicine. But now, watching the people of Harmony Falls transform before her eyes, she began to question that framework. And they invited everyone who lived in the surrounding area to come and join them. Thousands of people came. They came from the cities and the suburbs, from neighboring towns and distant places. They had heard about what was happening in Harmony Falls, and they wanted to see it for themselves. The festival lasted 3 days. There was music and dancing, food and drink, speeches and performances. There were art exhibits and poetry readings, craft fairs and farmers markets. People shared there and took care of their families and did all the things people everywhere do. But underneath the normalcy, something had changed. A kind of awareness that had never been there before. People still struggled and worried and got frustrated, but they did it with a different quality of attention. They were present for their own lives in a way they had never been before. Can I stay for a while? The traveler asked. Please, Tom said. Stay as long as you like. We always have room for people who are. Maria said. That's wonderful. I know, Tom said. I just never thought it would happen. After all those years of being apart, things change, Maria said. That's what this town taught me. Everything can change if you're ready for it. Tom's brother arrived in Harmony Falls on a warm June afternoon. His name was Michael, and he looked a lot like Tom, except with more gray in his hair and a permanente tired expression that he had carried for as long as Tom could remember. But when Michael stepped, Miscellaneous Records of the Bankyo by Yu Huai, written during the late Ming and early Qing transition, is a celebrated memoir of the brilliant Jiangnan entertainment quarters that flourished in late Ming China. Yu Huai, a scholar official who lived through the Ming collapse, recreates in vivid detail the famous courtesan quarters of Qinhuai in Nanjing and the literary salons of Suzhou. The work paints intimate portraits of the most celebrated courtesans, actresses, and singing girls of that vanished world, describing their talents in poetry, music, and conversation. Yu Huai's entries blend admiration with melancholy, as he describes beauties who possessed cultivation and wit equal to any literatus. The work serves as an invaluable cultural record of the late Ming pleasure districts and the elegant world of the literati who patronized them, documented by someone who knew that world firsthand before the Manchu conquest destroyed it. Extended across East Asian literature. Records of the World Beyond by Liu Yiking of the Liu Song Dynasty is a landmark collection of supernatural tales that expanded the boundaries of Chinese strange fiction. Drawing from earlier sources, contemporary accounts, and oral tradition, Liu Yiking assembled hundreds of entries documenting encounters between the living and the world of ghosts, spirits, and the divine. The collection demonstrates remarkable narrative sophistication, with tales ranging from brief anecdotes to elaborate stories with complex plots and psychological depth. Notable entries describe a scholar seduced by a ghost woman who turns out to be a previous life connection, officials who discover their administrative judgments affect souls in the underworld, and encounters with divine immortals who test human character. Liu Yiking's work represents a crucial development stage in Chinese supernatural fiction, bridging earlier collections and the mature strange tales of the Tang dynasty. The work's influence. Annals of Jinku's Seasonal Customs by Zhong Lin of the Liang Dynasty is the earliest and most detailed surviving record of Chinese seasonal festivals and folk customs from the pre-modern era. Zhong Lin systematically documents the major holidays and seasonal practices of the Jinku region, the cultural heartland of medieval China. The work describes New Year celebrations, the Lantern Festival with its dancing dragons and mysterious date-eating customs, the Cold Food Festival, collectors in their libraries, and the artisans and courtesans who animated that vanished society. Zhang Dai's prose is precise yet lyrical, capturing fleeting moments with painterly attention to detail. The work stands as both personal elegy and cultural chronicle, documenting the refined pleasures and artistic achievements of late Ming Jiangnan before the Manchu conquest destroyed that world forever. Commemorating Jizi Tui, the Dragon Boat Festival with its hanging of corrective charms, and the Mid-Autumn Festival with its moon-watching rituals. For each festival, Zhong Lin provides not only descriptions of observed practices but also explanations of their origins in mythology and history. As an ethnological document, the work is irreplaceable, preserving customs that have largely vanished while providing key evidence for reconstructing earlier festival traditions. 20 Years of Spectacular Abnormalities by Wu Jianren, written in the late Qing dynasty, is a forceful expose of social decay during China's transition from imperial to modern era. The narrator, whose pen name suggests a witness to absurdity, chronicles 20 years of bizarre and disturbing incidents from the 1880s through the first decade of the 20th century. The novel reveals a society in moral collapse, where officials are uniformly corrupt, merchants are swindlers, and the case of Magistrate Shi from the Qing dynasty, one of the earliest and most influential examples of the Gongan genre of investigative fiction. The novel follows Shi Tianyuan, a magistrate of extraordinary intelligence and moral commitment who solves crimes and dispenses justice with the aid of loyal retainers and supernatural assistants. Shi stands out among Qing officials for his genuine concern for the common people and his willingness to pursue justice regardless of the powerful. Survey of Ancient and Modern Talking of Fate by Feng Menglong, one of China's greatest compilers of entertainment literature, is a monumental encyclopedia of anecdotes, curiosities, and witty observations spanning Chinese history. Feng Menglong spent decades gathering material from historical records, joke books, and oral tradition, organizing thousands of entries by theme and subject. The collection includes political satire, literary wit, accounts of remarkable foibles, and Spring and Autumn of Yan and Zhao represents the historical chronicles and legendary tales from the Yan and Zhao states during China's Warring States period. This collection draws on historical records to reconstruct the dramatic struggles of these ancient Chinese states against the powerful Qin threat. The narrative tradition of Yan and Zhao is particularly rich in stories of loyal ministers, heroic warriors, and dramatic political crises. The famous episodes of this period include Stories of the Unusual by Yuan Mei, one of China's most refined literary minds of the Qing dynasty, is a celebrated collection of strange tales and supernatural accounts. Yuan Mei, a poet and scholar who rejected the rigid Confucian orthodoxy of his age, gathered ghost stories, miraculous encounters, and incidents from contributors across China. Unlike earlier supernatural collections with Buddhist moralizing, Yuan Mei's tales embrace wonder without didacticism. Fox Spirits, Ghostly. Small 5 Gallants by Shi Yukin, a sequel to 3 Heroes and 5 Gallants, continues the adventures of the martial heroes and introduces a new generation of protagonists. The work expands the world of the original novel, introducing characters descended from or trained by the heroes of the first novel. New adventures follow the young heroes as they encounter villains, navigate political intrigue, and uphold justice in a world where the forces of corruption constantly regenerate. As an officer in the city, Tom had been asleep when the strange night began. He had been asleep, in fact, more deeply than he had slept in years. But at 4 in the morning he had woken up suddenly, feeling wide awake, and had known immediately that something was different about this particular night. I've talked to about 20 people in the last hour, Tom said. Nobody can explain it. Nobody can sleep. And nobody knows when it started. People are saying they woke up around 2, 3, 4 in. 6 Records of a Floating Life by Shen Fu, written in the early 19th century, is one of China's most beloved autobiographical narratives. Shen Fu recounts his life with his beloved wife Chen Yun, a woman of remarkable cultivation and spirit who becomes the heart of the narrative. The work divides into 6 chapters, though only 4 survive in full. The first chapters describe their blissful married life in Suzhou, their modest gardens, their travels, and their simple pleasures. Shen, next day, or the day after that. But he didn't care. He sat by the stream, watching the water flow, thinking about his life. He thought about his childhood, his parents, his friends. He thought about Mary, and how much he loved her, and how little he had shown it over the years. He thought about the store, and how it had become more important to him than it should have. On the 4th day of his fishing trip, Jim had a conversation with a deer. It wandered out of the forest and stood on the always believed that the body was a machine, and that disease was a malfunction of that machine. Treat the malfunction, and the patient would get better. But what she was seeing in Harmony Falls couldn't be explained by any medical theory she knew. People were getting better without treatment. Not just feeling better, but actually being healthier than they had been in years. She ran tests on herself and found that her blood pressure, which had been slightly high for years, was now normal. Her Awake, Chapter 15, The Stay. The traveler stayed for 6 months. She stayed in the small hotel on Main Street, and she spent her days walking around town, talking to people, listening to their stories. She sat in Rose's coffee shop and drank coffee and watched the world go by. She hiked in the hills and visited the stone, though she never tried to touch it. She learned about Jim Harding and his fishing trip, about Lily and her music, about Dr. Park and her book. She learned about the letters. North, everyone who had been touched by whatever force was at work in that valley. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, all waking up at the same time, and she understood that this was only the beginning, that there were other places like Harmony Falls, other stones, other sources of light waiting to be found, that humanity was on the brink of something extraordinary, a new stage of evolution that would transform not just individuals but entire civilizations. Chapter 13, The Future. In the New Prefaces by Liu Shang of the Western Han Dynasty is a major historical anthology compiling anecdotes and moral tales from earlier Chinese history. Liu Shang, a royal librarian and scholar, organized thousands of years of historical anecdote into thematic collections designed to illustrate Confucian moral principles. The work covers examples of wise rule, ministerial loyalty, filial piety, and the consequences of vice and virtue through vivid historical episodes. Each anecdote is: she found her father standing in the backyard, staring at something. "Dad?" she said. "Dad, what is it?" Her father, David Kim, pointed at the ground. Sarah looked down and saw that the grass in their yard was doing something strange. All across the lawn, the blades of grass were bending in the same direction, creating patterns that looked almost like waves in an ocean. And in the center of the yard, right where an old tree stood, the grass was bending upward, toward the sky. "It's not just instead of having something taken away." "What do you mean?" Dr. Park asked. "I don't know exactly," Rosa said, "but I've been awake for 3 days now, and I feel different. I feel more alive than I've felt in years. More aware. Like all the noise of daily life has been turned off, and I can finally hear myself think." Dr. Park had to admit she felt something similar. The exhaustion was still there, like a weight on her shoulders, but beneath it was something else. A clarity of thought that she had The man took one sip, and his eyes lit up. "This is wonderful," he said. "Why didn't anyone tell me about this before?" Maria laughed. "Come back anytime," she said. "I'll always have something new for you to try." That man became a regular customer too. And every morning after that, Maria's little shop was full of interesting people, all of them looking for the same thing: a warm place, a good cup of coffee, and a little bit of kindness. The end. Maybe 2, maybe forever. I haven't decided yet. He kissed her on the cheek, got in his truck, and drove out of town. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't care. For the first time in 30 years, he was free. He found a stream about 20 miles north of town, in the same direction as the stone in the hills. He parked his truck and walked until he found a good spot to fish. Then he sat down on the bank, put a line in the water, and waited. He didn't catch anything that day. Or the same streets, the same houses. But there was an energy to it now, a vitality that hadn't been there before. His wife, Mary, was waiting for him on the porch. When he got out of the truck, she ran to him and wrapped her arms around him. "I've missed you," she said, and there were tears in her eyes. "I've missed you too," he said. More than I ever knew. They stood there for a long time, holding each other. And then Jim said something he had never said before. "I'm sorry," he said. For all the months that followed, the changes in Harmony Falls continued. People started new businesses, ones that reflected their new values and priorities. Rosa opened a restaurant that served only locally grown food and employed people from the town. Jim Harding reopened his grocery store, but this time he made sure to take Sundays off and spend them with his family. Lily started teaching piano to children in the area, passing on not just technique but passion. Tom Reeves ran for mayor and won on a reached his eyes. "I want to feel it too," he said. "Whatever you have here, whatever made you change, I want to feel it too." Tom put his arm around his. The morning, and they just could not go back to sleep. "It's like something in the air. Do you think it's something in the water?" Martha asked. "I doubt it," Tom said. If it were the water, we would have heard from the people on the other side of the river. But as far as I can tell, it's just Harmony Falls. Well, Jim said, I guess we're all going to be very tired tomorrow. The three of them laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. None of them really understood what was happening, and that made. At first, people were frightened and anxious. But as the hours of wakefulness stretched on, the fear began to fade, replaced by something like a dreamlike state. People reported seeing things that weren't there. Shadows that moved when they shouldn't. Colors that seemed brighter than they should be. Sounds that came from nowhere. A few people said they heard music, soft and beautiful, like a symphony playing somewhere in the distance. Dr. Park tried to explain these phenomena as symptoms of The Garden of Marvels by Liu Jingshu of the Liu Song dynasty is a rich collection of supernatural and anomalous phenomena that stands among the finest examples of early Chinese strange literature. The work documents extraordinary events, curious creatures, and inexplicable occurrences drawn from historical records and contemporary accounts. Entries range from vivid ghost encounters and spirit manifestations to accounts of strange natural phenomena and remarkable human abilities. The was right, she said to Rosa as they sat together in the coffee shop that night. We've been asleep, not physically, but spiritually. We've been sleepwalking through our lives, going through the motions, never stopping to ask the big questions. What big questions? Rosa asked, who are we? Why are we here? What are we supposed to do with the time we have? We never ask these questions because we're too busy. Too busy working, too busy worrying, too busy chasing the small dreams that keep us going. Her father had wanted. But now, with her father gone and the store closed, she was free for the first time to think about what she really wanted. She had always loved music. She had played the piano since she was 6 years old, and she had been good enough to pursue a career as a concert pianist. But she had given that up in high school because her father needed help at the store and she felt obligated to stay. Now, with nothing else to do, Lily started playing piano again. She played for story, her own waking up, her own realizations. That night, the whole family, Jim, Mary, and Lily, sat together in the living room and talked until dawn. They talked about their fears and their hopes, their regrets and their dreams. And for the first time in years, they felt like a real family. Chapter 12, The Celebration. On the 30th day, the people of Harmony Falls decided to have a celebration. They called it the Festival of Waking Up. They held it in the park at the center of town. For a while, I think I understand what it was. What was it? The hotel owner asked. Not a place, the traveler said. Not really. It was an idea. The idea that things can be different, that people can change, that the world we live in is not the only world that's possible. I spent my whole life traveling, looking for proof that another world exists. And now I have it. It's not a perfect world, and it's not an easy world, but it's a different one, and that's enough. The hotel owner nodded. He had carefully selected to demonstrate how moral behavior shapes political success and personal fate. Liu Zhang's editorial method transformed raw historical material into moral pedagogy, establishing a genre that would dominate Chinese historical writing for 2 millennia. The work was studied by officials, educators, and general readers as a guide to proper conduct and effective governance. New Prefaces stands as one of the foundational texts of Confucian moral literature. The Little Coffee Shop. Every morning, Maria opened the small coffee shop on Elm Street at 6 o'clock. She had run this place for 3 years, and by now she knew most of her regular customers by name. Tom always ordered a large black coffee and read the newspaper at the corner table. He was a retired teacher, and he loved to talk about politics and history with anyone who would listen. Maria enjoyed his stories about the old days. Sarah usually came in around 7:30. She was a nurse at, complaining of a headache. Your heart rate is normal. There's nothing medically wrong with you, but I feel terrible, Jim said. I've been awake for over 30 hours. I feel like I'm going to collapse. I know, Dr. Park said. I've seen 6 people this morning with the same symptoms, and I've examined myself, and I feel the same way. But everything checks out fine. There's no medical explanation for this. What about psychological? Jim asked. Could it be some kind of mass hysteria? Dr. Park. Like an opportunity, Tom Reeves, who had spent most of his life in law enforcement, found himself sitting at his desk, writing letters to people he hadn't spoken to in years. He wrote to his brother in California, whom he hadn't seen since their mother died. He wrote to his old college roommate, who had moved to Europe and lost touch. He wrote to his ex-wife, whom he still thought about sometimes, and told her things he had never had the courage to say before. When he finished writing, "Don't," said a voice. Tom pulled his hand back and spun around. There was no one there, but the voice had been clear, and it had come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Who's there?" Tom called out. "We are," said the voice. "And we are you. And we are everyone who has ever lived in this place." Tom looked at the others. They all had the same expression of confusion and fear. "What do you want?" Tom asked. "We want to show you," the voice said. "We have been trying to show you for a very—" "What?" "See how beautiful it all is," Rosa said. "This town, these people, this life we've built. I always knew it was good, but I never knew it was beautiful. Now I do." Chapter 7, The Letters. Over the next few days, the people of Harmony Falls continued to live in their strange, sleepless state. But it was no longer frightening. It was transformative. Tom Reeves sent the letters he had written to his brother, his old roommate, and his ex-wife. He sent them without expecting a response. He sent outside on the steps. They came not because they were supposed to or because they felt obligated, but because Lily's music was touching something in them. Something that had been asleep for a long time and was finally waking up. When Lily finished playing, there was silence. And then, one by one, people started to clap. Not polite applause, but real heartfelt clapping, the kind that comes from a deep place. "Thank you," someone called out. "Thank you for waking us up." Lily smiled. She didn't discovered what Sarah and her father had found. Everything in Harmony Falls was pointing in the same direction. Trees leaned toward the north. Flowers turned their faces north. Even the streams seemed to flow slightly faster when they were moving north. And when people stood outside and looked north, they felt something they couldn't quite describe. A pull, a call, like something was waiting for them. Tom Reeves organized a group to investigate. He took Jim Harding, David Kim, and 3 other. Single plant in every single pot was pointing in the same direction. Not toward the window or toward the lights, but toward something else. Toward something Sarah couldn't see. She checked and rechecked her experiment, certain that she had made a mistake. But no matter how many times she checked, the results were the same. The plants were all leaning in the same direction, as if they were all drawn to the same point in space. Sarah ran outside to tell her parents. But when she got there, men from town, and they set out toward the hills. The hills north of Harmony Falls were covered with dense forest. Few people ever went there, because there was nothing but trees and rocks and the occasional deer. But on this morning, the 6 men found a trail they had never noticed before. It was narrow and overgrown, but it was clearly a path, and it led upward into the hills. They followed the path for about an hour, until they reached a clearing near the top of the hill. And in the center, university nearby, one winter morning, a man walked into the shop. He was tall and thin, and he wore an old brown coat. He looked around as if he had never been in a coffee shop before. "What can I get for you?" Maria asked with a smile. He looked at the menu on the wall for a long time. "I don't know," he said. "I've never had coffee before." Maria was surprised, but she didn't show it. "Then let me make you something special," she said. She made him a small cup of her sweet vanilla latte. "How?" The traveler thought about this for a moment. "More alive," she said finally. "More present. In most places I go, people are half asleep, even when they're walking around with their eyes open. They go through the motions, but they're not really there. Here, people are really there. They're awake." Tom nodded. He had noticed that himself. After the strange nights ended, life in Harmony Falls had slowly returned to something like normal. People slept again, most of the time. They went to work. Off the bus and saw the town for the first time, his expression changed. He looked around at the gardens and the murals on the buildings, at the people sitting in outdoor cafes and children playing in the park. He looked at the hills to the north, where the stone was hidden. "This is what you wrote about," Michael said. "This is what happened here. This is what happened here," Tom said. Michael stood there for a long time, taking it all in. Then he smiled, and for the first time in years, Yard, David said. He sounded odd and a little frightened. "I walked around the block this morning. The whole street is doing this. Everything in the neighborhood is leaning the same way." Sarah thought about her plans. "Everything in one direction. And now this. What direction is it?" she asked. David pointed toward the edge of town, toward the hills that rose up beyond the last houses. "North," he said. "Everything is pointing north." Chapter 5, The Hills. By the 5th day, the whole town had special was happening. I've been to a lot of towns, she said to Tom Reeves, who had invited her to dinner at his house. A lot of special places. But I've never seen anything like what happened here. What did you hear about us? Tom asked. Oh, word gets around. People talk. They say this town found a stone in the hills that glows blue at certain times of year. They say the people here had some kind of collective awakening. They say things are different here, better somehow, different. Rarely experienced. A sense of presence, of being fully in the moment. Maybe you're right, she said slowly. Maybe there's something to this. That night, for the first time, people in Harmony Falls started to do things they had never done before. People who had always wanted to write started writing. People who had always wanted to paint started painting. People who had always wanted to learn an instrument started learning. The sleeplessness, which had felt like a curse, was starting to feel. Long time. But you were always asleep. Always too busy dreaming your small dreams to wake up and see what was really there. See what? Jim asked. The stone began to glow brighter. The air around it shimmered, like heat rising from summer pavement. And then, slowly, an image began to form above the stone. An image of the town. Harmony Falls, as it was now, but also as it had been, and as it would be. They saw the town 1,000 years ago, when Native American tribes had lived in the valley and become a kind of crucible, burning away everything that was false and leaving only what was true. Chapter 8, The Changes. On the 10th day after the strange nights began, Jim Harding made a decision. He had been running the Harmony Falls grocery store for 30 years. He had opened it when he was 23, right after he got married. He had built it into the heart of the community, a place where people came not just to buy food but to catch up on news and exchange greetings and feel like hours every day, relearning pieces she had long forgotten, discovering new music, finding her way back to something she had lost. One night, she played a piece by Chopin, one of the most beautiful piano compositions ever written. She played it in the church in town, because the acoustics there were better than anywhere else. Word spread that Lily Harding was playing, and people started coming to listen. By the end of the week, the church was full. People sat in the pews, in the aisles, even. A light that could be seen from outside. It was an inner light, a radiance that came from within. People looked at each other and saw it in each other's eyes, in the set of their faces, in the way they stood and moved. They were glowing with something that had been inside them all along, waiting to be awakened. Dr. Park understood then what was happening. It was not just Harmony Falls that had been changed. It was everyone who had come to the festival, everyone who had felt the pull toward the lived in Harmony Falls his whole life, and he had seen the changes happen right before his eyes. He had watched his neighbors become kinder, his town become more alive. He had felt it himself, in small ways every day. I never thought I'd see the day, he said. When I was a kid, this was the most boring place in the world. Nothing ever happened here. Nothing ever would. And now look at us. We're famous. People come from all over the world to see what happened here. The traveler smiled. The city hospital, and she always looked tired. She liked her coffee with a lot of cream and 2 sugars. Sometimes she would fall asleep at the table if her shift had been especially hard. Then there was the young couple. Maria never learned their names, but she always saw them sitting together at the window seat. They always ordered 1 coffee and 1 hot chocolate, and they always shared it, taking turns. They never seemed to be in a hurry. Maria thought they were probably students at the